Welcome to the Boat Galley Podcast. I'm Lin Pardey, here with practical tips, some stories, and some how-tos for your cruising adventure.
This episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Infinity, the most trusted name in woven vinyl flooring in the marine industry. Since 2008, Infinity has offered boat owners premier flooring options proven to withstand even the most demanding environments. Each of their products is equipped with UV-stable fade resistance and antimicrobial technology, giving them both durability and style that can't be matched. Thinking about kicking carpet to the curb? Make the switch to Infinity and see the difference true luxury makes. Use the coupon code PODCAST for 50% off samples.
Slow down, slow down. It seems utterly appropriate to be talking about reprovisioning because I just finished doing that. We are currently sailing between Fiji and Vanuatu, and it was in the shops of Suva that I had to find various items to top up the stores locker. So right now we are on passage, and that's the sounds you hear behind this recording. Beam reaching, 20 knots of wind. Pretty darn good sailing. So let me talk to you about reprovisioning as you voyage. It's relatively easy to fill your food storage lockers as you prepare for your first ocean passage. You probably know the layout of the town, products will be familiar, and you'll know where to get the best prices. But what do you do when your storage lockers begin to empty, when you open the second to last jar of mayonnaise, or when you notice there's only 3 packets of pasta left? Reprovisioning your floating warehouse can be either an affordable pleasure or a budget-destroying traumatic exercise, depending how you plan your cruising routes. As your stores begin to dwindle, the most important thing to remember is that everywhere people need to eat. So even if you cannot find the foods you prefer, even in the most isolated villages, you'll find enough to keep you going. It may be corned beef or canned fish. You'll still find cooking oil, jams, flour, pasta. The less developed a country is, the more people will depend on canned and dried food. We've bought food supplies in more than 70 countries and in some of the most isolated villages in the world. And though there were times when we found shelves that were bare, except for a dozen cans of bully beef and a few noodles, we could have survived. But survival is not what makes cruising interesting and enjoyable. When we cruised in 24-foot Saravan, a 5-ton boat with locker space for about 20 to 25 cases of provisions, we found we needed a good reprovisioning port every 6 months to ensure interesting eating. An 8-ton Taliesin, which displaces more like 9 tons right after a full reprovisioning, we carried close to 40 cases of provisions and went 9 months between major reprovisioning stops. That doesn't mean we didn't stop, add bits and pieces in little shops along the way, but I'm talking about major reprovisioning. But by choosing our reprovisioning stops carefully, we found we could cut our food expenditures by 30 to 50% and save several $1,000s a year. Prices for canned and packaged provisions will always be higher on islands than on mainland countries. The further offshore an island is, the higher the prices will be. Transportation costs are the main reason for this, and your choices for provisions will be more limited on islands. French islands worldwide have very high prices, but an excellent range of goods. The supermarket on the very isolated island of Réunion in the Indian Ocean had a truly stunning display of cheeses, pâtés, sausage, wine, and condiments. In that case, I could afford a selection of these because we'd been cruising in very inexpensive places the previous 6 months. In less developed countries, any locally produced goods will be inexpensive and more often organically grown than those from developed countries, but imported goods will be expensive. Costs in European Union countries will be about double those in the US, although fresh food in Mediterranean countries is still reasonable. Countries with controlled currencies have high prices on imported goods and low prices on local goods. The same is true of countries with high inflation rates. You'll find a more limited range of canned, dried, and packaged goods in tropical countries than in areas with more temperate climates. This is because the local people have easy access to fresh food year-round. Also because tropical climates cause cans to rust, packaged goods to decay, and bugs to multiply in grains and cereals. So shop owners keep only limited supplies on their shelves. In countries with limited selection of provisions, check out shops in the major tourist areas and near wealthy retirement communities. This is where we often find the specialty items that enliven offshore cooking. But keep in mind that prices in these shops will often be higher than in regular supermarkets. One of the lessons we learned the hard way is that if you see something you need or something that's a real favorite, buy lots of it immediately, even if your lockers are still pretty full or the price is a bit high. You'll probably not find that same item the next time you walk into the shop. Even in the progressive economy of Sydney, Australia, supplies of non-essential packaged goods were often sporadic. One time I bought only 3 jars of Larry's favorite blueberry jam because I just didn't feel like carrying anything extra. I didn't find any more of it until we reached Fremantle 7 months later. Don't be ashamed about appearing constantly cost-conscious as you look for reprovisioning ports. It's essential to research and find the best value for your money, especially if you're on a cruising budget, because your single largest expense will often be for food and drink. Jane Reynolds on board the yacht Utua had a final comment. Don't take a food list from someone else unless you know and like and eat everything they eat. Would you do that at home? I can't help but agree, and after looking at different people's food lockers, I find that most long-distance cruisers soon come to the same conclusion. They overstock on their favorite things. They buy more every time you see things they like. Learn to use your boat as a pantry warehouse. Preservable food is never a waste. You can use it a year later and probably find it was like a savings account. But always remember that you'll be able to find food to eat anywhere you find people, even when the local eating style is vastly different from yours. I think that is one of the joys of cruising. It's either feast or famine as far as store shopping goes. But when it's a feast, you really appreciate it and remember it. Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please be sure to subscribe in your podcast app. And reviews are always appreciated.
Slow down, slow down.